Makai Beats.
Hey love bugs, welcome to LoveGrind. This is Ebony, your host, and I'm glad that you decided to tune in tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about why so many people fear being single forever. When we get out of relationships, we tend to think because the other person found somebody that we're going to be alone forever, that we're not lovable. And that's just not the case. We all know that nothing lasts forever, so just be patient. Let's get right into it. More than 120 million adults in the United States are currently single. That means nearly half of the adult population is navigating life without a long-term partner. Among people between the ages of 25 and 34, the numbers are even more surprising. Around half of men and more than 40% of women in this age group are single. When you hear those numbers, something becomes very clear. Being single is not unusual, and it's certainly not rare. And yet many people who are single feel like they're the only ones going through it. They scroll through social media and see engagement announcements, wedding photos, couples traveling together, and friends celebrating anniversaries. Over time, it can create the impression that everyone has already figured out their love life, while we're all somehow falling behind. Not at all. This feeling becomes even more intense when you go through a breakup and then discover your ex has already started dating someone new. Suddenly, it seems like they've moved forward while we're still processing what happened. And at that moment, a question starts appearing in the back of our minds. It's persistent. What if you end up being single for much longer than you expected, or even forever? Tonight, we're going to talk about why so many people experience this fear today, why seeing an ex move on can trigger it so strongly, and why the reality behind these feelings is often very different from what our minds tell us. Even though millions of people are single love bugs, it does not always feel that way. One of the main reasons is the way we observe other people's relationships. When people are happy in a relationship, right, they tend to share these moments publicly. They post photos, talk about their partner, and celebrate milestones online. Relationship moments are visible and easy to notice, right? But single life, on the other hand, is much quieter. People rarely post about the nights they spend alone, the awkward first dates that do not lead anywhere, or the weeks when they simply take a break from dating. Because of this imbalance, our perception becomes distorted. We see the highlights of relationships everywhere, but we rarely see the equally large number of people who are still figuring things out. And at this time in our lives, it's good to grow our relationships with other people, our families, our friends, they deepen, and most importantly, with ourselves. And that's okay to do. That's awesome to know that you're going to emerge in your next relationship as this beautiful person that has taken time to heal, all right? So remember that. Over time, we can create this illusion that being single is unusual, when in reality, it has become one of the most common relationship statuses in modern society. I've talked to many people who are just okay with being single. Matter of fact, they can't fathom having somebody in their face after they've been single for so long. Make sure you get on LoveGrind.com or LoveGrindPodcast.com and let me know how long you've been single. How do you feel about it? Are you on a race to find somebody, or are you okay with just growing and being alone? Let me know. I would love to hear from you. So, if the relationship might have ended months ago, years ago, and you may have already started rebuilding your routine and adjusting life without that person, but the moment you see that they're dating someone else, well, it can suddenly reopen emotions you thought you had already processed. Part of the pain comes from the feeling of being replaced. Yeah, that's a big one. It can seem as if the role you once had in your life has simply been filled by another person. Well, it kind of has, right? Another part comes from comparison. It is very common to look at the new partner and start wondering what qualities they have that you lacked, whether they are more attractive, more confident, or somehow a better match. But perhaps the most powerful part is the sense of timing. When your ex moves on quickly, it creates the impression that they've already progressed to the next stage of life, while we're all just still standing in the same place. And that perception can easily turn to a deeper worry about our future. Psychologists have studied something known as the fear of being single, which describes the anxiety people experience when they imagine a long future without a romantic partner. This fear can influence the way people approach relationships in really significant ways, love bugs. Individuals who strongly fear being single are often more likely to stay in relationships that are not fulfilling simply because they fear being alone. They may ignore incompatibilities, overlook red flags, or convince themselves that a relationship is working even when it is not. Ironically, this fear, it can sometimes make relationships more difficult rather than easier. When someone feels pressure to avoid being single at all costs, their choices may be guided more by anxiety than by compatibility. You know that you're not right for that person, but you're staying because you just don't want to be alone. You're not able to stand basically on your own 2 feet emotionally. And it says something about someone who's okay with being alone and okay with not having an emotional or romantic partner. People are waiting longer to marry than previous generations, right? Another reason the fear of being single has become more common is because of that. The dating environment has changed dramatically over the past few decades. Education, career development, and financial stability, they often take priority during early adulthood, which naturally delays long-term relationships. At the same time, dating apps have completely transformed the way people meet. While these platforms have created opportunities to connect with people outside of one's immediate social circle, they have also introduced new challenges. With so many potential options available at any moment, people can experience something psychologists call choice overload. Kind of like I feel when I go shopping sometimes, I have an overload. When the number of choices becomes extremely large, decision-making can actually become more difficult rather than easier. Instead of feeling confident about a connection, people may constantly wonder whether a slightly better option might appear with the next swipe. That's terrible. There's so many options out there. And a lot of them are lying. So that's weird, One of the most powerful myths about relationships is the idea that finding a partner automatically solves the problem of loneliness. In reality, though, loneliness is much more closely related to emotional connection than to relationship status. It is entirely possible for someone to be in a relationship and still feel misunderstood, disconnected, or emotionally distant from their partner. Damn right. And at the same time, many single people build fulfilling lives filled with meaningful friendships, family connections, personal projects, and goals. The presence of a romantic partner does not automatically determine happiness. What matters for more is the quality of the relationships and experiences that shape someone's daily life. You know how many people are together and there's no romance? So it is not a flex for you to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend and you're disconnected and you're not getting emotionally fed and you're not romanticizing. It's a terrible thing. I'd rather be alone. Although being alone is often viewed as something temporary that people are trying to escape from, it can also be an extremely valuable stage of personal development. Periods of independence give people the opportunity to explore their interests, strengthen their sense of identity, and understand their own priorities without the compromises that come with the relationship. During this time, individuals often develop greater confidence and clarity about the type of partner they truly want in the future. Ironically, people who become comfortable with being single often end up forming healthy relationships later on because they no longer feel the same urgency to settle for connections that are not right. One of the biggest sources of anxiety, love bugs, around relationships is the belief that there is a universal timeline that everyone is supposed to follow. Society often implies that certain milestones should happen by specific ages. Meeting a partner in your 20s, getting married in your early 30s, and building a family soon afterward. But real life rarely follows such predictable patterns. Many people meet their long-term partners much later than expected, while others experience relationships that lead them down completely different paths. There's no timeline. Society has these norms that make us think that being chosen is what we want. And that is not always the truth, especially not for everybody. Life unfolds at different speeds for different people. And the timing of relationships is often influenced by countless, unpredictable factors. If you have ever worried about being single for a long time, especially after seeing an ex move on, you are far from alone in that experience. Millions of people are navigating the same uncertainty while trying to balance personal growth, careers, friendships, and the search for meaningful relationships. Being single at this moment in your life does not define. It is simply one chapter in a much longer story that is still unfolding. And for many people, the most meaningful relationships appear not when they are desperately searching for them, but when they have already built a life that feels full and meaningful. Thanks for joining me tonight on LoveGrind. I hope you learned something, okay? Please show yourself empathy this week and anybody else around you. Okay, I'll see you next week, and until next time, I'm out.